I drove down to Dorset yesterday for a talk. I was asked to give a talk and actually MC an event in a lovely place called Shaftesbury. Beautiful village. There is Gold Hill there, famous for the old Hovis adverts in which a young boy is pushing his bike up the cobbled street. And it was used, I think it was Ridley Scott who filmed that in something like the 1970s. Very famous for a bread advert back in the day. I wasn't there anything to do with the bread advert, and I didn't even manage to get to see Gold Hill, which was a shame. But I was there to see some wonderful people who are very much awake to the problems of the world and give as much as an inspirational and motivational talk as I could, and bring on a number of other speakers who were there also to do similar and talk about their specialist subjects. And it was a marvellous event, and people were so kind, and they were saying how much they appreciated the YouTube videos that I do and all of that. And it was rather magical. In fact, I was rather astounded when somebody said to me, they said, "Oh, Richard, we love the significance of your pocket watch." And I have this pocket watch here, which is a lovely thing. I must wind it up, actually. It was given to me by my partner, the lovely Julia, who I adore, and I adore this too. And it was given to me because I wear the sort of style of clothes that I wear. And they said, "Oh, we love the significance of it." And I said, "Oh, what do you mean by the significance?" "Oh, you know, the pocket watch, the rabbit hole." And I still wasn't quite sure. And they said, "Alice in Wonderland, the white rabbit going down, I'm late, and going down all the different rabbit holes." And I said to them, I said, "Do you know what? That's the first I've heard of that. It wasn't intentional at all." And it is funny how people start to look for patterns and they look for things that are secretly hidden or signals that one is giving to the audience. And to be honest, I had never even considered such a thing. So it is so useful to talk to people and get the feedback to the videos that I make and how they're going down, because sometimes, as you can see from that example, they're seeing things that I wasn't intending. I just hope that they're seeing the things that I am intending. But anyway, it was a lovely evening. At the end, and this is the bit that I wanted to talk about in today's video, I was introduced to a town councillor. Now, he unfortunately hadn't been able to actually attend the event. He came right at the end. And I said to him, and he was a very intelligent sort of chap, and I said to him, "Are you a good town councillor or a bad one?" And he looked at me very quizzically, as if to say, "Well, I don't know what you mean by that," almost as if he was waiting for a barrage of abuse. Now, I asked him a very important question, and I said to him, "Have you heard of Andrew Bridgen?" And he said, "No." And I said, "Oh, I am absolutely quite shocked that a town councillor, an intelligent person who has the council and the community as part of your remit, isn't aware of the MP for North West Leicestershire, Andrew Bridgen, who stood up, of course, in the House of Commons on the 13th of December to an empty house to talk about the yellow card system and the harms of a recent medical intervention. And there again stood up on the 17th of March to an equally empty house. In fact, people were pushed out and told to leave, when he was talking about the mortality rate, shall we say, the unexpected mortality rate that had been going across not just this country but the world, and had started in about 2021 as a result of potentially the result of something that had been mandated to a lot of the people in the world, certainly in this country at certain times, or had been so pressured to have it that people couldn't keep their jobs. Anyway, the town councillor said he hadn't really heard of him and wasn't even aware of any of this. And I said, "You know, you're an intelligent man, and I have to say, with greatest of respect, I am extremely shocked at that naivety." So he said, "Well, who are you?" And I said, "Well, I'm just Richard Vobes, a YouTuber." He said, "Well, I'm going to check you out." And I said, "Well, you do that. You're very welcome." And we talked about some other areas such as 15-minute cities. And he said, oh, yes, somebody did mention something about 15-minute cities at one of our council meetings. And he had real no notion of where it was. I asked him if he knew about the WHO. He had no notion of that, and a vague notion of what the WEF was. And I had to actually spell out that it was the World Economic Forum, a think tank of unelected bureaucrats, of globalists, if you like, who are making policy and sending that policy to all the governments and effectively telling us what we're going to do. And I said, you know, you listening to us then for the very first time must sound like we are a bunch of conspiracy theorists. And of course, yesterday's conspiracy does seem to be today's news, which is a very strange situation to be in. So he was intrigued by all of this because he'd actually heard a little bit about it, but didn't really know. And I said to him, you know, if you were going to have a 15-minute city in which all the amenities and everything that you want would be within 15 minutes, and you wanted to reduce the amount of travelling because of pollution and various things like that and danger to the public and things, I said, surely if that was your aim, you would put in all those facilities and give people an incentive to stay within their area so they didn't need to travel around, not restrict people's travel or indeed penalise them if they did, or start putting in cameras. He was aware that there was an increase in surveillance because he had been flashed on a motorway a couple of times by these gantry motorway cameras when they have the changing speed limits, when they adapt them, you know, the 1 minute they're 70 and the next minute they're 50, and he'd been approached by that. And I said to him, well, in my supermarket near me, and I won't bother to mention the name, they need no advertising, I said, but they're now taking biometrics, they've got cameras everywhere, it is such a surveillance society. I said, I don't understand why we need to do this. And he was slowly coming round, and he thought, it was something that he was going to check out. Well, I hope that he does, and he may even see this video. And if you're watching, I apologise for not remembering your name. I was introduced to so many people yesterday, as I am all the time, and so a lot of names sort of disappear. But he seemed a very upright, a very intelligent gentleman. And I just figured that a lot of these town councillors are in their bubble. They're doing the best they can. They're not really aware of the wider agenda. They're not aware of such places as the WEF. They're probably not aware that the WHO, the World Health Organization, have a treaty that wants to take away our country's sovereignty. And so that if there was another pandemic, for example, or another event, doesn't have to be a pandemic, they can decide what the health response, and not just the health response, what the economic response, whatever the response is for all the countries around the world, as if one government is telling everybody else this one size fits all to everybody, and that effectively you're making government and even councils pretty much obsolete, because they will say, actually, we've decided that in this event we must act now, and everybody needs to be perhaps given another medical intervention to prevent who knows what, maybe a bird flu or some E. coli or some neurovirus or whatever it is that they decide they, in their top-down Davos central office, is what the rest of us all over the world will have. And I hope that somebody like that councillor will now start to talk perhaps to his colleagues and say, well, they did seem as if they were very knowledgeable and also upright members of the community, although perhaps a little bit mad or a bit biased. But that doesn't matter, because it's important that he now starts to make his own investigations. And as I said to him, look on the WEF's own website and you will see there in plain sight the plans that they have, the 15-minute ghettos in which we are going to be pushed into these communities that the countryside is going to be rewilded and a place where humans are not allowed to go because we're trying to save the planet from man-made global warming. And hopefully he won't be overwhelmed by all the information that you and I, the lovely viewer, is watching, because we've taken that time over the last 6 months or 2 years, whatever it might be, to digest, assimilate, and start to think about what's happening to us. But the reason I mention all of this is very much a strategy that the Great Rising meeting was putting forward as a suggestion, talking to those people in the councillors, people at the low level, people who are implementing stuff because they've been told to implement this stuff, thinking that this is the right thing to do, because all of these things are sold on the basis that it is a sensible policy, that if you have everything within your community, you would reduce the amount of traffic and we would be helping the planet by reducing the CO2. This gentleman I spoke to was vaguely aware that the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere was 0.04, that's 400 parts per million, and that if we reduce it too much, as we seem to be, and get down to 0.02, you start to find that plants will die. And if plants die, animals die, humans die, we all die. We are the CO2 they're trying to eliminate, of course, because we are made up of that. We are carbon-based life forms. And so just talking to people in these positions of the low-level entry point that are doing the work, they are building the prison, but they don't know it. They think they're doing laudable things. Dropping the questions in, are you sure you know why you're doing this? And I think this is the way, and has been suggested in the Great Rising, this is the way that you start to talk to and tackle those people who are inadvertently building the prison that's going to affect them and their families. You know, the policemen, the firemen, the ambulance people, the people doing the work, the people digging the holes and putting down the cabling for the 5G, the council workers, they're all doing something which they've been told is very important and is a benefit. And we just need to have these very gentle conversations in which you ask them, are you sure you know the full story? Do you know why this is coming in? What is really the benefit and who is it for? Or are you actually contributing to the problem? So I urge people, and it's only my opinion, of course, to talk to people. If you are awake, if you know what's going on, talk gently. Just take one point. Don't barrage them with everything because it's too much and they'll think that we're all mad. But just get them to question what they're doing. And by doing this, I think there's a chance that we strip away the workers that the people like the WEF and the WHO and the globalists and the cabal, they rely on these people who are only at that stage of the need to know process. And they've been sold the story, they've got to do something that is supposedly beneficial. And we need to get them to be able to then question the next tier up and say, actually, are we doing this for the benefit of us, or is there a bigger agenda behind it all?